Hello and welcome to 3DX. In this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to create a fairly simple stylized dagger. Now, this is the model that I'm going to be basing this off. This is the final result, but I'll be showing you how to create it from scratch. The tutorial is going to follow the process for how to model it here in Maya, essentially the low poly. Then we're going to be taking this into ZBrush and adding a few details here and there. And then finally, I'll be taking it into Substance Painter and then later showing you how to do the render using Marmoset Toolbag. All right, so this tutorial is for anyone who is relatively a beginner. If you are still kind of looking at tutorials for, finding out how to make something, this is for you. And I'm going to be using Maya for the model, but let it be known that even if you're using something like Blender or 3ds Max, the concepts for making the model are pretty much the same. The only thing that differs are the tools. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and make it. So let me get rid of this. So let's start out by creating the shape of the blade. So what I'll do, I'm going to create a cube for that. And I'm going to be using the radial menu here for that, and I'm going to be using that mostly throughout this tutorial. Now, if you don't know how to access this to create, say, a new model, what you can do is hold down the Shift key and then right mouse click, hold those two, and then you can kind of choose some of the options here. So let's go ahead and create a cube. I'm going to press R just to scale this up. Right now, we're not really concerned with the scale of the actual model when it pertains to the world scale. We're just going to make the model, make it look cool, not worry too much about things such as where it's positioned and the scale of it. All right, so for the actual blade, this should be fairly simple. Let's go ahead and make a add an edge loop in the middle. So I'm going to hold down Shift again, and then what I'll do is I'm going to use the connect components. I selected all those edges, and then I added this one in the middle. You could also use the insert edge loop tool. And let's move this down. Make it a little bit taller here. And we want this to be fairly sharp. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do that by adding another edge loop here in the middle. So let's add a connect component. And I'm just going to scale this out just to give it that edge so that it looks sharp. There we go. And then at the top here, I'm just going to flatten this out. We just need it to be sharp at the bottom. Alrighty, and that's pretty much your blade. So it's fairly simple to make. And it gets the point across. You could give it a little bit of a flare here at the bottom if you want it to be more interesting and maybe not so flat, right? Or the other way around. It's up to you what you want to do there. It's always a good idea to experiment with a few different things. Let's see, I almost wanted to give it a bit of an edge here in the middle as well. Though that might look too weird. So let's leave it the way it is. Alrighty, let's create the handle. So I'm going to make a cube once more. Move this up. I'll leave it that way for now. And then I'll make another cube, or we can just duplicate this one with Control D. Sometimes it's a good idea to make the basic shapes first without going into detail, just to get a little bit of the size and silhouette that you want for this. You don't have to necessarily go straight into making it look pretty and detailed, right? Especially if we're just prototyping. And then this is going to be the final piece here at the top. Alright, so we have the basic shape, and now we can go ahead and give it more detail, like I mentioned. So for this, let's see, I want to make this a little bit more interesting. A lot of edge in the middle. And then I'm going to use the bevel tool here. And what I like to do is I like to hold down Control and the middle mouse button to have more control over how this thing kind of adds to the bevel instead of doing it here through the menu that shows up. Alrighty. Let me add another one in the middle. And let's use that same bevel. And I want to move this thing down a little bit here just so that there's more of a shape, an interesting shape to it. Let's add some edge loops here that we can work with. And what I'll do is I'm going to scale this a little bit in here so that there's more of a silhouette to this shape. And we're not working with, really geometric shapes. I think I'm also going to add an edge loop here between these two sections. And I'm using the multi-cut tool for that. Just because I want to scale this section so that it looks like it's kind of, connected a little bit better with the blade. Okay, and then let's see, if I press the 3 button, this smooths the model. So I kind of wanted to do something like that, but I'm going to add a supporting edge here and bevel this. Let me shape it a little bit more by moving some of these. Maybe we can add another supporting edge here in the middle as well. Alrighty. Okay, I kind of like that. I'm going to press 1 again, and then I'll use the smooth option. And this is going to give us some of that geometry. And we can come in and delete some of the stuff that's not really doing much. That, for example. And I think I want it to be slightly more round. It looks a little bit low poly, so let's go ahead and do another smooth. Press G for that. And then here, it gives us more edges than we really need. So I'm just going to delete them. Here as well, we can collapse a few of these. Let's enable symmetry as I work on this. So for that, I'm going to hold down Control Shift and right mouse click. And under symmetry, first we have to enable it. And by default, it's choosing the Z-axis, which is what I'm working with here. If it's not for you, you can go back to that and change the axis to whatever you are working with. So just deleting a few of these edge loops that are not doing too much. I think this should be fine. Get rid of a few more here. Alright, let's leave it as is. You can always delete more if you feel that this is too high poly for your needs. But in my case, I find that this looks perfectly fine. I do want to move some of these down. I'm going to press B to enable soft selection, and then hold down B and the left mouse click to kind of move or make the selection a little bit smaller. Alrighty, I think that looks good. All right, let's go ahead and work with the handle here. So for this one, what I'll do is we could probably have used a cylinder instead of a cube. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's replace it and add a cylinder. Scale this up. You can change how many subdivisions this is made out of. If you want less, you can do that. Scale this. Let's go to vertex mode. Also, I'm going to disable symmetry for now. Let's move this up. There we have it. And then I want to give this a little bit more interest. So what I'll do is add an edge loop. Maybe here at the top, one at the bottom. Oops. And I'm going to scale the ones in the middle here. And for that, I'm going to use transform component. So if you hold down Shift, right mouse click, go to transform component. And then I like to use the blue arrow because that's the normal direction of the model. All right, let's see what that looks like. Maybe a little bit less. It's looking a little bit thin for a handle. Move it down a little bit so it's not so long. I think the blade could also be a little bit longer. Alrighty. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to model what may look like straps on this. So for that, what I'll do is I'm just going to duplicate this cylinder. So Control D, Control 1, just to see that as the only thing in my scene. And what I'll do is I'm just going to delete some of the edge loops here. Or actually, let's do something different. So that we have a little bit of an angle to it, I'll enable the multi-cut tool. And then I'm just going to draw that in here. There we go. And I'll just delete everything that's not part of it. Because we're going to be taking this into ZBrush, and ZBrush doesn't like open holes on your models. I'm going to close it, fill hole, bottom and the top. And let's fix the angons, because ZBrush also does not like angons. Use the poke face. Righty. And I'll change the pivot point by going to, I'm holding out down the space bar, going to modify center pivot. Scale this up a little bit more. And I'm also going to give it a little bit of a bevel to the edge, so we read a little bit better. And let's move this up. And what you can do is just duplicate it. Probably give it more spacing. Gonna move this one down. I think the angle can be a little bit more like this. All right, I think that looks better. Now I'll just going to duplicate it. And there we have it. It's sort of a strap. It's a little bit, simple, but we are making a fairly simple stylized model here, so it should suffice for what we're doing. And then finally, let's make the top. I'm going to kind of copy the pattern that I used for this, make it similar to that. Let's give it some edges here. All right, something like this. Maybe it could be a little bit smaller. It's just the end cap here. I'll press 3 just to see what this is looking like. I think we may just want to bevel it. Let's see how that looks like. I do want this section just to be a little bit rounder. And scale it down a bit. Slightly, not much. Alrighty, I think that looks good. So I'm going to go to 1 and then smooth this one. So we get that geo. And I think this one should be fine as the low poly. Let's just remove this edge in the center. Perhaps this one as well. You can remove any edges that are not really doing a lot to the silhouette of the model. All right, that's looking good. So we have all the shapes that we pretty much need here. Kind of want to scale these a little bit like that. Alrighty. Okay, there we go. Then the blade kind of looks, let's see, not too happy with what this is looking like. What if we scale this? Give it a little bit more thickness in the center, but we're still keeping the sharp edges. I think I kind of like that more. Then this section is now flipping a little bit. Scale it more. Alrighty. Okay, I think now this is looking good. For the blade, I think I wanna give it we delete this. Connect it here. Let's bevel this blade as well. It's still sharp, but it's got a little bit of a bevel. This is gonna help us out as well when we take it to ZBrush. Okay. Okay, so let's count this as our low poly model. That we can take into ZBrush and add a little bit of detail. Now at this point, we don't really need to do things like UVs. At this point, that's too early for that. We're not ready for it. Let's go ahead and do some sculpting, and then just in case, because when you do sculpting, there may be a chance that you may need to retopologize the model or take the decimated mesh from ZBrush and use that as your final low poly, which is why we don't want to necessarily add UVs for it at this point. All right, so before we take it into ZBrush, a few things I want to do here. I want to add some supporting edges to this model in particular. So we're going to be subdividing in ZBrush, and for that we need supporting edges. Okay. We may need supporting edges for these guys as well. I'll just do it on one, and then the other ones we're just going to duplicate. There we go. So these, remove them. Oops. Okay. So if I press 3 on the whole thing, it should hold up its shape for the most part. Though I think the blade may not. We may not actually subdivide the blade now that I think about it. Alright, one last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to freeze transforms on this, modify freeze transformations. I'm also going to delete history on it. And I think we may want to name some of the pieces as well. So let's just call it Dagger 01. Let's see, this one should be one mesh. So I'm going to combine it. And just name it Dagger 02. 3 and 4. You can give it specific names if you want, but it's not actually necessary. And then I'm going to give it an underscore low. At the end, just give it a suffix. Okay, so now what we can do is we can export this to ZBrush. So let's go ahead and go to File, Export Selection. And then I'm going to export this as my Dagger 01 low. And then under the options for exporting, make sure you have these settings. This should work pretty well for what we need here for our low poly. Exported, in my case, I already had one, so I'm just going to replace it. And there we have it. We're going to be taking this into ZBrush. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, for anyone watching on YouTube, if you want to see the remaining section where I show you how to sculpt it, texture it, and render it, please go ahead and take a look at the video description or the comment section where I'll have a link to the Patreon or the 3DX premium page as well. Both are the same. You can sign up for $5 per month and you can get tutorials just like this one. So if you want to see the remainder of the tutorial, please go ahead and take a look at that, and I'll see you there.